Welcome inside the WCBL studios for the 5th episode of the WCBL Report. I'm your host today, Clark Monroe, here at IKS Media, and my co-host today, again, Joe McFarland, the one and only. Joe, welcome to the show. Exciting weekend, exciting week with Canada Day yesterday, and some big news on the attendance numbers. Maybe let's start there just with yesterday and the spectacle that was Canada Day.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look, the numbers kind of speak for themselves, but to be in the barn, I was down in Lethbridge for the Weyburn Beavers and Lethbridge Bulls contests, and both ends of that double dip were fantastic from a fan perspective. It was 32 degrees, so I'm obviously going to apologize for a little bit of the glow that I still have going on from being in a hot Spit Stadium environment there. But as you can see there, 2,075, it was standing room only at Spit Stadium, and they were treated to a big Bulls win in that contest. We'll get to the scores in a little bit. That big number from Okotoks, though, man, oh man, are they bringing in some big crowds with that sunshine. Sylvan Lake, Regina, Moose Jaw, Fort McMurray, all doing well. Look at that total. Clark, I got to tell you, that sets the bar real high for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, I mean, 41,000 fans through the doors in one day across the board. Yes, there was 8 games, but still that's pretty fantastic to see. And also, Joe, like you said, it just kind of creates a little bit of momentum because the more people you get in for a game like that, they're all going to want to come back for another one at least. And, you know, I was at the lake last night, so I wasn't at the game in Regina yesterday afternoon, but 1250 in Regina in that ballpark is a great crowd. That would have been, like you said, standing room only for sure, all the way down the baseline. So it would have been exciting there. And like you said, just creating some momentum. And I actually was talking to our good friend Ian Wilson earlier this morning, and he said last year's Canada Day was about 30,000. So you're adding about 11,000 seats or 11,000 butts in seats right there. That's pretty fantastic news.
And a big thank you as well to BrokerLink Insurance for sponsoring the Canada Day festivities across the league. I know there was a lot of excitement. A lot of people obviously looking forward to some Canada Day festivities, such as, some fireworks at the end of a few of those nightcaps in particular. Some of the photos that are being laid out in the social media spheres through the WCBL look like great crowds, great, and I mean, sunshine, a few wobbly pops, you name it, and some fun, family fun entertainment. It was a great way to cap off what was probably a long weekend for a lot of folks. How many people were actually working on Monday? Let's be real here.
I was, but that's beside the point. That's beside the point. I know exactly what you mean. I know a lot of people booked off that Monday on purpose because it's a perfect little extra day to a long weekend, like you said. But let's have a look at the scores now. Let's actually start with Monday's games because that led into Tuesday's Canada Day festivities, and there was some rematches here, so it's important to kind of look at this. As you can see, Saskatoon they took a 12-10 win over Regina on Monday. A big win for them. A tough one for Regina. Anytime you can put 10 runs up on Saskatoon, you hope you can beat them. Not the case there. 13-8 win for Brooks over Weyburn. Energy City got a 7-2 win over Fort Mac, which was an important one. And then Okotoks 11-0 over Lethbridge, just cementing their spot at the top of the West standings. And then on Tuesday, the big day, there are 2 doubleheaders in here. You can see the one on the top right, Energy City, Fort Mac. Fort Mac won both of those games. And then Saskatoon beat Regina 5-3. There is a doubleheader there. You see Lethbridge and Weyburn twice. Lethbridge got 2 wins on the day, 27 runs in 2 games. That's a tough day for Weyburn, but they got 15 of their own, so it's not like they weren't doing anything on their end. A very good 3-2 win for Medicine Hat over Sylvan Lake. A very good game there. 57s won 13-2 over Moose Jaw. Hopefully they're trying to find their footing, Ian or Joe, as we kind of figure out what the bottom of the West is going to look like here. And it's funny because anytime Moose Jaw seems to have a chance to gain some ground on Regina, when Regina loses a game, it seems like they also lose a game. So just unfortunate there. Sorry, one more game if you can throw that one back up for me, Ryan. I kind of went off on a tangent, but there was one more score. Okotoks with a 15-4 win over Brooks. Thank you, Ryan. So let's go look at the standings now, and I'll let you kind of go off on these standings, just because there is some movement, but at the same time, more solidifying spots than anything, I would say.
Yeah, and now we are entering officially, unofficially, the second half of the season, right? In a 56-game season, 28 games is your midway point. So a lot of these teams are at 25, 26, 27, depending. And so this is where I was saying during the pregame show for the Lethbridge Bulls Weyburn Beavers game last night, this is where the rubber meets the road. You've kind of staked your claim as far as where you are kind of starting off at. the teams that are hottest at the end are typically the ones that make the most noise come playoff time. So if you're in a good spot, if you're Okotoks or Saskatoon, you're sitting pretty. You don't necessarily need to keep the foot on the gas, although I'm sure they're going to want to, because home field advantage kind of a big thing heading into the playoffs. But as you mentioned, Sylvan Lake getting 6 wins. It was funny, last week we were talking about them being on a bit of a downturn after losing a couple to Saskatoon and a couple to Regina. They turn around, come back home, get some home cooked meals, and they turn around and win 6. So now they're in a good spot now in that solidifying that third place spot in the West. Over in the East, like you said, Moonshots, a little bit of a break from Weyburn now, especially after Weyburn's going to be really happy to be going back home after a really rough Alberta swing here. And Swift Current's catching on. They beat Moose Jaw last night. So now you kind of get a sense as to, okay, there's some wiggle room here. But again, teams are starting to figure themselves out. Now they've gotten the chance to get to know each other, and now we get to see how the July month pans out and how this stretch run is going to go for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and we might see a couple extra new bodies coming in. I just saw over the last couple of days the Red Sox have added 2 players, an outfielder and an infielder. Sound like they have pretty good pedigree. I know that like Sylvan Lake just recently got a pretty important pitcher back. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But let's have a look at the power rankings here really quick. Now, these came out, of course, we're recording this on Wednesday. These came out yesterday. So again, reminder, they're probably in the past 10 in that column where it says last 10. That might be off from when these power rankings were created. So keep that in mind. However, it is still kind of relevant to what we're talking about here, because you mentioned Sylvan Lake's going up. You mentioned, we talked about Weyburn going down. So what stands out for you when you're looking at these power rankings right now for Sentinel Storage and Access Storage?
As far as the play over the last week, 2 teams kind of stand out to me, both going in completely different directions. One being the Okotoks Dogs, and they've really found their footing, and they had one heck of a run against Lethbridge Bulls in the last week or so, and I'm pretty sure Lethbridge was really happy to see Okotoks' bus leave Spitz Stadium at the end of that series, because holy moly did they put up a lot of runs, and Okotoks is showing that they're not missing a beat despite some of the big names that graduated in the offseason, the Graham Brunners of the world and the Brendan Luthers of the world. They've really found their stride, and they're going to be a big challenge for the Saskatoon Berries heading into the last month of the season here. On the flip side of that, man, you got to feel for the Weyburn Beavers. They've got a good young core and some solid veterans, and they come into Alberta and just face the meat grinder. They lose to Okotoks, they lose to Brooks, and then they lose that double dip against Lethbridge last night, and a tough luck kind of game too. Is they gave up 7 and came back and scored 6 all within an inning of each other. And it was just one of those games where it's just like, okay, maybe Weyburn can get one, steal something to go back home feeling good about themselves. Now they get to go back home, and you know who they have to face right off the bat? The Saskatoon Berries. And you just have to go, oh, right. And so I think those 2 teams are on polar opposites. But again, I think we're, especially for Weyburn, I was talking to Cam Williams yesterday, and he said, listen, like, we just need to get on a run here. We're not out of it. We're 5 games behind Moose Jaw. They're going to face each other a lot during the last half of the season here. There's a lot of Saskatchewan versus Saskatchewan going on, and Alberta versus Alberta side. It's going to be a dogfight, and Weyburn knows they've got a lot of veterans that can maybe pull them through it. And all they need to do is get into the dance.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And all it takes, like you said, is just maybe a couple bounces to get a win here, a win there, and then all of a sudden you're winning games and you're on a roll. And the tough part for them, you mentioned their recent trip. Now, overall standings doesn't really matter. Of course, it's divisional based. But when you go to Brooks, for example, and they're below you in the standings, and then you lose both games to those guys, that's tough. And it's huge for Brooks because they need to win those games as well and try to get pushing up their standings on the West. But it's tough to lose those kinds of games. And then we look at Energy City, Fort Mac. I just noticed that, think about them. They had that crazy tournament over the last several days in Fort Mac. Energy City wins the game on Monday, but then Fort Mac comes back and wins both games, and they're right behind Energy City. So those 2 wins are almost double. They mean double because they're, I call them in hockey, they call them 4-point games. They were both 4-point games, and it was a doubleheader. So it was an 8-point day for Fort Mac. So that's a big couple wins for them as well. Let's go into the hitter stats here, Joe, because, man, we were down to 6 400 hitters last week? We're back up. We got more again. So there's been some hot hitters lately. What's going on?
I really like the play of Bernie Sakaros. And again, I'm kind of throwing it back to I have a little bit of recency bias having a chance to go see the Lethbridge Bulls and Weyburn Beavers, but just a solid gamer, like a guy who's not going to throw you for a loop as far as power is concerned or anything like that. He's hitting at the top of the order and is battling and is making life miserable for pitchers. And obviously, when you're hitting 424, that's the name of the game for Bernie Sakaros and the Lethbridge Bulls so far. And a young team that they were talking about as well. Is they're going to have their ebbs and flows. They're going to have games where they get shut out by the Okotoks Dogs, and then they're going to turn around and score 27 or whatever it was in 2 games. So that's a guy that stands out. The other guy, and the credit to the Okotoks Dogs and their social media team for pointing this out, but Zane Scansey is in the top 8 of 3 of the is the only guy in the top 8 of 3 of the major offensive categories. He's having himself a stellar first season with the Okotoks Dogs right now, and is helping power that high-powered offense.
Yeah, and I mean, when you got guys like Barry Eisman and Connor Crowson at the top, and then you have a guy like that, it almost turns into like a murderer's row type situation back in the day, the Bronx Bombers type thing, where you can maybe get these 2 guys out, but there's another one. It's like, oh boy. So it's like, yeah, that's a tough situation and a great situation if you're Okotoks, and of course Lou Pote knows what he's doing in terms of bringing guys in and filling up that roster each and every year. Reason they've won 4 out of 5. Let's just go with that. But home run leaders, because there's some changes at the top, and it's really exciting to see what's going on with Ethan Menard, Joe.
Whammy is absolutely correct. And whether it's Ethan Menard hitting 6 in a week, which we'll get to in a little bit, you'll look at another guy, Wilmer Henriquez, who's kind of come out of nowhere almost over the last couple of weeks here and has skyrocketed to the top of that list. Those are the 2 big names. One other name that I got, again, recency bias, and also a fun little chat with Carter Clarehout over the course of Canada Day. And he said, hey, listen, the last one I watched you guys talking about this, you talked about everybody around me except me.
Oops.
And that's fair. Carter Clarehout's having himself an awesome campaign. I would not be surprised at all to see his name involved in the All-Star game, which is coming up in a couple of weeks' time in Okotoks. He's a veteran guy who's balling out because he knows that this is his last year playing ball at the collegiate level, and is playing that veteran presence that the Lethbridge Bulls need, because they've got so many new faces around. On the offensive side of the ball, he's provided some stability along with Jack Kaliski, and really done a fantastic job with the Lethbridge Bulls.
Well, Carter, I got two things for you then. Carter, first of all, you've been talked about. And second of all, thanks for being a fan. Thanks for watching, Carter. Appreciate it. That's great. Now, the pitching leaders, the couple names at the top are pretty much the same, but there has been some changes as well below that. Levi Abbott and Blake Johnson continue to lead the way. If you look at Blake Johnson's ERA, though, oh my gosh, Blake, it's ballooned. But again, 203, still second best in the league. But it was down at 0, so that's just how good he's been, that we are talking about how his ERA is ballooned, and it's still exceptional. But anybody else stand out for you here that we haven't mentioned maybe, or you want to talk about?
As much as I want to give credit to Brett Getz, thanks to him for stopping by and chatting with me as well from the Lethbridge Bulls. He's having himself a fantastic year. As a youngster with the Lethbridge Bulls, one guy that kind of stands out to me on this one is Braden Giavina with the Energy City Cactus Rats. Here's a team that's floating around that 500 mark, and he's been a steady calming force on the mound for the newly named team from the Capital Region. He's been really, really good for them. And the other one that's kind of snuck up on, as much as everybody talks about the offense with the Saskatoon Berries, Diego Quinones has been an absolute fireballer for the Saskatoon Berries, and that's a really big challenge for a lot of teams facing the Berries right now. Is okay, sure, it's great. We've got to face their offense, and oh, by the way, we've got some pitchers too. Great, exactly what we want, and that might be part of the reason only facing 3 losses on the season.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Plus, he's got one of the coolest names in the league, so I'm glad you mentioned him, Diego Quinones. I love it. We mentioned one of these guys already, but there was actually a second spectacular performance over the week, and not just one game, but the whole week in general. So let's talk about the players of the week. You here may say players. We couldn't decide. So Joe and I, we debated, we talked, we analyzed, we overanalyzed. We said, is one thing cooler than the other thing? Because they're cool. But no, we said, let's just give them both player of the week. So first player of the week, we already talked about him. let's go with Ethan Menard of the Saskatoon Berries, just because what he did this week was exceptional. There's no other way to put it.
I don't know if I've ever seen, I like, it's one of those stats that's really hard to track, but how many guys can say I hit 2 home runs in the same inning? It's one thing to do that in a game, but he did it in an inning. And he also had one game with 3 home runs.
Yeah,
He
that
had
wasn't even
6
his
home
best
runs in
game.
just 3 games. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. What and talking to some of the players from Weyburn, they said they're kind of tokes that ways. You're going through a meat grinder with that batting order. You think okay, you get through the first 3 or 4 guys, nay. Okay, Carter Beck, that's cool. Whatever you want to do, you can do. But then you get Ethan Menard back, and it just adds another level to an already vaunted Saskatoon Berries roster. So congratulations on an outstanding performance. 6 home runs in just 3 games during the course of this last week for Ethan Menard.
Yeah, like you said, it's Abiam Medina hitting 4 or whatever, 24, whatever he was hitting. Okay, then Carter Beck. Okay, then Ethan Murdoch. Okay, now you got Ethan Menard coming in there. So it's like, holy, and they got more. There's more than that. That's maybe why the Berries are doing so well. And then we can't overlook this one, because this was just as historic, if you want to put it that way, a cycle. And who hit it? Who was the guy, Joe?
It shouldn't be anybody's surprise if you saw the score from this game. Connor Crowson of the Okotoks Dogs. I believe the score was 22-2 or 22-6, something like that. Like I said, Lethbridge was glad to see Okotoks' bus leave Spitz Stadium, and part of that was Connor Crowson. He hit for the cycle in a game. He was all over the score sheet for the Dogs all week long, and you saw that, like, he's hitting over 500 for the week, has really become a spark plug. And again, another veteran guy. Everybody knows him from the walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th against Moose Jaw in the final. He's saying, I want to do that again, and he's really proving his worth for the Dogs again as the veteran guy who went through every level of the Dogs Academy program and now finds himself being the star attraction for the college level Dogs.
Yeah, extremely impressive stuff. What a week there. What a week for both guys. We had to mention both. And I'm sure there was a couple other players as well with some great performances. Sorry if we missed you. Carter Clearhout, I hope we didn't miss you. I hope you didn't have an unbelievable week. I'm going to bring that up. I love that. I love to hear that the players are watching, right? Because that's what we're doing this for. We're doing it for them. So appreciate all of that. But we just talked about them. It's time for the Pile of Bones play of the week. And it's not 1, it's 2 home runs from Ethan Menard. Let's hear the call.
Menard doing it with these Berries, and that might be back-to-back jacks. Yeah. Menard is going to watch that one fly way gone. It cleared the berm. Oh, gone swimming is Ethan Menard, and it's 2-0 Berries. This one takes flight, and the wind might take it all the way to the back wall. Volcano is there, and it is gone. I can't say I've ever seen this many home runs in an inning at Athletic Park. It's the 4th one to go over the wall.
The 4th one and the 2nd one in 1 inning for Ethan Menard. And like you said, if you saw the highlight of the first one, you obviously couldn't see the flight of the ball, but it was a no-doubter. I mean, he skyrocketed that thing. As you can see by his reaction, he knew it was gone. The second one, he hit it a little bit off field, wasn't quite sure, but as the announcer said, the wind took it a little bit and it carried over the fence. So a huge day for Ethan Menard, and a huge day for the Saskatoon Berries in that one against a very tough Medicine Hat team. But there was also, Joe, some very cool alumni updates that we wanted to get into. One pretty cool one that let's maybe lead off with what we saw on TV during the Blue Jays broadcast the other day.
I got to give a lot of credit to Jamie Campbell of Sportsnet, because this guy has been the ultimate pro and has been a big supporter of the WCBL over the years. And in particular, really kind of capturing headlines around these parts. Last year, when he did the tour through Sylvan Lake, Medicine Hat, and Okotoks, he was at it again during the Canada Day festivities on Tuesday. And he's chatting with John Morosi for their regular Blue Jays Central update. And he breaks out the Weyburn Beavers hat, because look there, John Morosi, who says his favorite WCBL team is the Okotoks Dogs, who happily supplied him with a brand new ball cap as well. Gave some tributes to the WCBL and some Summer League baseball out in Western Canada. So thank you to both of those guys. But interestingly enough, the the conversation then swayed to a WCBL alumni and a former Rookie of the Year and a former playoff MVP. That, of course, being Tristan Peters. We've thought about him, but he put the nice little bow on what has been a fantastic June for him. And I want to get the numbers right. In AAA with the Durham Bulls, 385 in June, 5 home runs, 27 RBI, and 4 stolen bases. He was also a human highlight reel for the Durham Bulls, and it had John Morosi saying he would not be surprised if the Tampa Bay Rays say, we got to make a spot for Tristan Peters, especially as they expand the rosters at the end of August. Right. So don't be surprised if we get to have some cool MLB around a WCBL alumni before too long. Speaking of those alumni, a couple more for you. One, Eric Sabrowski. We've talked a lot about him, and he missed most of the preseason and exhibition season because of injury. He's back. He went through all the things that he needed to do to get back from an injury, and he is back with the Cleveland Guardians and made his first appearance of the season on Friday against St. Louis Cardinals. Pitched a flawless 9th inning in a 5-0 loss to the Cards for the Guardians. He made his second appearance on Canada Day. He didn't give up a run in the 7th and technically gave up a run in the 8th. It's a weird one where he only faced one batter. There's a long side story where he allowed a single to Pete Crow Armstrong. Then he gets pulled. Pete Crow Armstrong is out on a fielder's choice. Dansby Swanson's the guy on first. So technically, that's still Sabrowski's run. Swanson comes around to score. So technically, he's allowed his first run in MLB action ever. Wow. I don't get the scoring. One other one for you before we end the alumni updates. And I feel like Gary Bettman here on draft day when he says, we have a trade to announce.
Yeah, we got to hit the big buzzer.
The big buzzer. I don't know. We can go on a whole other tangent about the NHL draft this year.
Don't get me started on that.
I figured that was going to be the reaction. Titus Dimitru, a former Okotoks Dog, was drafted by the Atlanta Braves in the 16th round last summer. He has been traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates along with some cash for right-handed reliever Hunter Stratton. So a lot of Atlanta Braves and WCBL connections in the last couple of years here. And no longer with Titus Dimitru, as he's now the newest member of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
It happens. It might be a good opportunity for him. The way Pittsburgh's going, who knows? It might be a spot for him there. So that's good news in the long run. So thank you for that. The good alumni update there. Lots of fun stuff. And as we move along here, we're going to look ahead to the next couple of days. But one thing we want to just kind of put out in the world now is that we are just a couple of weeks away, Joe, from the WCBL All-Star Game in Okotoks at Siemens Stadium, of course, on Saturday, July 19th. There's going to be a home run derby before the game. The game starts at 7:05. And we will be starting to maybe have a look on a weekly basis here as we lead into the All-Star Game, Joe, just who we think might be in the front running for those spots, who we think might be a dark horse for a spot. And then when the rosters get announced, we'll obviously have a huge show about that as well. But pretty exciting stuff with the All-Star Game. I know you're going to be involved. So what are you looking forward to? What's going on with the All-Star Game right now?
Man. And so right now, as it stands, the teams have been given the call. Time to nominate your players for who you want to see be representing your organizations. Obviously, the coaching staffs have to be announced, although in the past, and I don't know if this has changed at all, I need to clarify this, is usually it's the coaches from the reigning divisional champions. So I assume it's going to be Lou Pote for the West, and over in the East, it's going to be the Moose Jaw Miller Express's Eric Marriott. I assume that's the case, unless somebody says otherwise. That we'll just go with that. And then from there, we get the coach players announcements, and so excited to see that. And we'll also get to hear about who's going to be in the home run derby as well. A lot of front runners. I could probably assume that Ethan Menard might get a shot at, although I have a feeling that Ethan Murdoch and Carter Beck was second in last year. So curious to see if he's willing to maybe give it another shot or if he wants to hand the mantle over. Peyton McDowell is the reigning champion from the Fort McMurray Giants. He's not with the team this year, so there will be a new home run derby champion. It'll be interesting to see how he wants to divvy up those responsibilities. I know talking to the guys from Lethbridge Bulls and Weyburn Beavers this on Canada Day, there's a lot of excitement about could possibly be involved because it's become a bit of a spectacle in Okotoks.
Yeah, you know who I bet will be involved in the West? Carter Clearhout. Book it. He's going to be in it. I love that.
He wants to. Don't get me wrong. He's one of those guys. And it's funny, we were talking about it, and I said, do you want it? And he goes, of course I want it. In my last year, Jack Kaliski might have something to say about it. He was Lethbridge's rep last year. So if they do get named, I wonder if there's going to be like a game of rock, paper, scissors or
fight it
something
out.
like that for it, or if like coach's favorite. I'll be curious to see how Ryan McDonald wants that to play out for the Lethbridge Bulls.
My guess is Ryan McDonald will be like, I don't want a part of this. You guys figure it out. I don't want. I don't want to be. Let's have a look at tonight's games, Joe.
Boxing now, all of a sudden.
Yeah, fight. Tonight's games, as you can see, the only thing on this that we'll have to just make a note of is the game in the bottom right there, Okotoks and Brooks, is actually in Okotoks. Brooks is the home team, but it's in Okotoks. So just a heads up there. It's at Stevens Stadium tonight. But the Red Sox are in Weyburn. That's actually going to be a doubleheader. So that's obviously this schedule graphic. We came out before this reschedule happened. So apologies there. But that is a Regina Swift Current doubleheader. It actually starts at 6 o'clock. And I think they're just going to play the second game immediately following. And then Moonshots in Saskatoon to take on the Berries. Medicine Hat is rematching against Sylvan Lake after last night's 3-2 Medicine Hat win. So Sylvan Lake's going to want to bounce back because, like you said, Joe, they had won 6 games in a row prior to that. So a pretty important game for them to get bouncing back. On Thursday, we have a big one. Weyburn's up in Saskatoon. As you mentioned, Joe, it gets no easier after their Alberta road trip. They got to go right to Saskatoon. Moose Jaw's playing the Regina Red Sox. That is the WCBL Game of the Week. So we will have a pregame show specially made for that game that will be on our WCBL YouTube page, as well as if you're watching the Regina broadcast, it will be on the Flow College broadcast prior to that game. So stay tuned for that. The Medicine Hat Mavericks are up in Fort Mac taking on the Giants. The Energy City Cactus Rats are facing Brooks again, a very important game there. Energy City is, of course, ahead of Brooks in the standings, but they need to start putting some wins together against those teams to make sure they don't catch them. And then Okotoks will be in Swift Current to take on the 57s. And on Friday, we have a look at Okotoks remains in Swift Current to take on the 57s. Saskatoon and Moose Jaw flip venues. Energy City is going to be in Sylvan Lake. Lethbridge will be in Brooks. And again, Medicine Hat's still in Fort Mac against the Giants. So what are you looking forward to this week, Joe? What tickles your fancy, so to speak?
Not on the schedule for those 3 games, but it's going to be a homecoming of sorts for the Energy City Cactus Rats as they get to play a couple of home games in their new home on Saturday and Sunday. Kind of. So they're going to be playing at Henry Singer Ballpark in Spruce Grove. It's an opportunity for fans to see what exactly they got for a team, because it's been a long road to being able to get that stadium built. And I know that the Cactus Rats made a kind of announcement last week around what they're trying to do to get the ball rolling with their field. Hard to say. I suspect we're going to hear some news from them by the end of the week or maybe sometime next week. Keep it locked on the WCBL channels because we'll keep you updated on what's going on there. But it's going to be exciting for that community just to get to see their team finally play a game or two, albeit not necessarily at the stadium that they are hoping to open before too long. That's a big one for me. I'm also kind of curious to see, we're starting to see the interdivisional rivalries start to dissipate, right? A lot of these teams have stopped doing, the Alberta teams have stopped doing the Saskatchewan trips or almost done those trips, and vice versa. So now you're going to see a lot more of the divisional rivalries set in. You're seeing Moose Jaw playing Saskatoon and Regina and Weyburn, and on the Alberta side you're seeing Lethbridge playing Sylvan and those kinds of things. So now you're starting to see those playoff pictures, and to your point, 4-point hockey games only in baseball terms.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be every game is going to be crucial from here on out, Joe, and it's only going to get tougher. So this is the best time of year because, like you said, this is where the rubber hits the pavement, or however you want to put it. But you got to give it everything you got. Thank you, Bryce. Joe, thank you for joining us today. Obviously, a great week with Canada Day and everything going on there, and an exciting week coming up. But we'll chat again a week from today.
Of course, always a pleasure.
All right, for Joe, I'm Clark here in the IKS Media Studios for the WCBL Report, Episode 5. For everybody in the back, Bryce, Ryan, everybody who helped out with the graphics today, appreciate you. And we'll see you again next week. Get out to the ballpark and enjoy the baseball, everybody.
Hot ice. I heat up the ice cubes. It's the best of both worlds.